Hi, I'm Metta Spencer. Do you think we can solve the problem of war? Do you think we can abolish war? Well, I've been working on it a while, and we're going to talk to somebody today who's also working on that. He's working on an outfit called World Beyond War. And this is Marc Eliot Stein. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Great. Good
Good.
to see you. Thanks for inviting me here.
hmm Well, we're both peace workers, or in casual terms, peaceniks. And
Mhm.
you're in New York, I think, and I'm in Toronto. And we met a couple of years ago, or maybe three, at a conference that World Beyond War put on here in Toronto. And boy, your organization is the most effective peace working outfit I have seen. You're really good at it. So
Wow.
I really
Well,
appreciate
we'd
that.
all be thrilled to hear that. Thank you.
Well, it's true, and I really respect the extraordinary organizational capacity. And I don't exactly know what your role in it, but I think that you handle a lot of communications things for the organization, right? So I think we want
Um,
to eventually get to talking about our mutual concerns about trying to bring peace to the world. But really, I don't think we can start the day as if nothing had happened yesterday. Because yesterday was the day when Biden was certified as the next president of the US. And I was busy on Zoom with other things until quite late in the evening when I first discovered that there'd been a domestic terrorist attack against the US Congress. And so, in a way, I'm just getting caught up on that news, but I was shocked beyond belief. Maybe we should start off by talking about what has to be a threat to human security and peace globally when we have really what even nice people would call a madman.
mhm.
Think in power and with control over, and at the moment the exclusive opportunity to control and use nuclear weapons in from the US as well as all the other military units. I think we ought to talk about what how the hell did people get ourselves into a predicament like that where we are, the world could, human civilization could be put to an end without question. He could push a button practically, and that would be the end of civilization. And human beings have set it up to be that way. I think that's something we ought to give a little thought to. What do you think?
Oh, for sure. Yes. It is quite a morning to be talking to you, Meta. I'd like to just, reference what you said about World Beyond War. That's very nice to hear that you think highly of this organization. And there are several peace organizations. And one thing that I really like about the peace movement is none of us are competitive with each other. We're all on the same team. And, World Beyond War has many affiliates and many partners, but it's nice to hear you say that you think we're doing great. We are growing at a fast rate. The organization was founded in 2014, I think. Oh, I should get my math right, but we're not an old organization,
Mhm.
and we're growing at a great rate. And I just want to say first about the Trump ordeal. The Trumpist ordeal is that I feel lucky that I joined World Beyond War only about 3 years ago. I joined by going to a conference just like the one you and I met at. You and I met in Toronto, where I think you are now. That was a wonderful conference, September 2018. That was my 1 year anniversary. In September 2017, I just walked into their conference, didn't know anybody there in Washington, D.C. Um, and said, I want to get involved. I want to help. And luckily, I'm a web developer. So to answer your question, what I do is I'm a web developer. That's what I do for a living. And I am the technology director for World Beyond War. I'm very gratified to have spent the Trump years not just bemoaning how horrible everything is, but working on what I think is the most important activist cause in the world, which
Mhm.
is ending war. And I certainly consider Trump to be the prototypical warmonger.
Mhm.
The idea that he's anti-war, I consider laughable. He started a war in Iran. He's escalated the war in Venezuela. He's created a new war on our Mexican border, and he's created a civil war right here in the USA. So I am very agitated about what we saw yesterday. I did watch, I work from home as a software developer, so that means I can have my TV on way too much. So I watched all of it. You said you tuned in later. Maybe I'd be feeling better today if I tuned in later. But it was just absolutely shocking to see. The first thing that I'm appalled by is that the DC police, who bash heads when it's BLM, when it's Black Lives Matter, who react to Black people protesting with tear gas and sticks, really just let these white supremacists into the Capitol. It's shocking.
Well,
Everybody I know is shocked.
I heard some of the pundits, like late night people, saying that they suspected that there was some sort of inside support for it because apparently there were police officers or somebody in charge opening the barricades, allowing
Mm-hmm.
people in, and having. I saw one guy with this, somebody taking a selfie with this officer as
Yeah.
if they're buddies, and that this kind of cooperation occurred rather than a proper defense of the Capitol. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. Did you see enough to give you the idea that maybe there? But I read even this morning that this event had been planned by the, was it Proud Boys or something, for months, maybe other groups as well. I don't know, but this had been planned. It couldn't have been a complete surprise. In fact, Trump himself, had said, somebody asked him a while back, do you commit to a peaceful transfer of power? And he said, well, it all depends. Uh, so this is a pretty good indication that he had intentions to support something of this kind. So I don't know what can be done. What do you think? Given
Well,
the
first of all, I did.
what?
I agree with what you've said there. I also saw the video of the DC police simply letting the rioters enter the Capitol building. Not talk about the Capitol city, the Capitol building, letting them actually in. Um, I also saw what you saw, the picture of a cop taking a selfie with um, with one of these people. And so yes, and also, you said this was planned by Proud Boys. I believe this was planned by the Trump administration, because now I know that I lived in DC. I lived in Virginia for a while. I know DC very well. And at 12 o'clock in the ellipsis, which is just across the park, a direct path from the Capitol, this was it was completely known that these people, and what was happening in the Capitol yesterday is that they were certifying the electoral results. It was a very key event in the Capitol.
Mhm.
So they interrupted the certifying of the election. And, basically, when the Trump event ended, it was simply a matter of walking across the mall. The mall is this long rectangular park in Washington, D.C., walking from one side of the park to the end of the park, which is the Capitol. So it was very, the risk that there would be a riot at the Capitol was completely known to everybody, and yet there was no preparation. And
Well, okay. So would Trump himself have been orchestrating it? I mean, that is saying more than I had. I know that everything indicated that he was encouraging it, but to actually have been engaged in, creating a space for them to meet in, and then giving the order that the police should let them in, is there any reason to believe that there was an actual um, directive supporting this? I mean, I think maybe we don't know yet, but have you heard anybody say that could have been the case?
I don't think electoral results. The whole context here is that Trump is going to lose office and be subject to criminal prosecution, and he's doing everything he can to to subvert the transition of power. So the key event was that there was this certification going on, a joint session of Congress, which is very rare when the Senate and the House are both gathered together. This is what was happening. Trump planned an event very close to this at the ellipsis in the park. So yes, I don't think there was a directive. I think there was a setup.
Mhm.
By putting this big event so close to the Capitol, it was clearly being orchestrated that there would be some kind of riot. I do not think that I don't think anybody anticipated that the DC police would let the rioters right into the Capitol. I don't think anybody could have expected that. That was inexplicable. Um, but I also I'm I don't want to focus just on yesterday because I want to get back to the question you're asking: what can be done? I mean, I have been seeing the Trump ordeal through a fascist lens, through the lens of fascism. That's how I view this. And I also understand, Metta, you are a sociologist and a peace scientist, and you may have your own framework for understanding what's going on. Some people think Trump is just a dumb racist. I don't think so.
I think he's a
I think
genius at
he's
what he
part of a
does.
large white supremacist movement. um, but I think the way we interpret what happened yesterday probably has to do with how we interpret the last 4 years and maybe the last 200 years. So there's so much to say. I don't even know where to begin.
Well, you know, here's my dilemma. Not so much a personal dilemma, because in fact I don't know, and I have no contact with any Trump supporters at all. Living in Canada, and especially living in isolation, I don't go out much because of COVID. I don't have any reason to meet people except my own network anyway. So I literally do not know a single human being who supports Trump, and it's completely unfathomable to me. So my speculation is in a way all hypothetical, but I do have a a sense of what it's about that I think differs from the typical analysis, and that is and one of the reasons I am pretty confident of my judgment on this, although it was a predisposition to believe this, because I'm kind of an anti-Marxist and never been very Marxist or very oriented toward class analysis, explanation of things in terms of social class struggle. So maybe that's my bent, but what the exit polls for the November election indicate to me is that, and I spent some time looking at them, the the usual demographics that you would expect to explain these variation in voting results have very little effect, if almost negligible. That is particularly education and income, which are the big drivers of social class and social activities mostly. And it turns out that income is not related to support for Trump, according to the exit polls, except when you get to above $100,000 a year. For people who earn that much, then there's they are the ones who support Trump. So it's not that the usual explanation is that it's the poor, disadvantaged people who've been shut out of the labor market by globalization, and they live in the Rust Belt, or they live in Appalachia, or and that they're underprivileged, and it's poor people supporting Trump. Well, no, it's not. The people who supported Trump, if anything, had a higher income, slightly higher on average. But the real noticeable difference occurs only among people who are quite prosperous. And they are more likely to support Trump than poor people. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, you'd say that education, mostly it's a matter of undereducated people believing Fox News or something. And I don't think that either, because it looks like education in the exit polls didn't make much difference, except among people with postgraduate education, master's or professional degrees, that kind of thing. And those people were much more pro Biden.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, professional people who presumably would be the people with good incomes, but they go in opposite directions. Income, if anything, richer people vote for Trump, but education, if anything, uneducated people vote for Trump. And those two just kind of, where do you find uneducated millionaires? Well, not so many, or not even.
I mean,
not really education that varies particularly. It's only among the most what they call elite. People with professional expertise, training, that kind of thing, that you see any variation by education. So I think it's not social class. Now, what is it then? Well, the results that I have seen from people who actually spend time with these ruffians, these neo-Nazis and so on, are saying that it's primarily a sense of a feeling that their dignity is being compromised, that they should be have a higher social status than all of these immigrants and these, Muslims and all these people they abhor. So it's a competition for status as opposed to money. And therefore, what is the solution? Well, the solution, if really it is a matter of feeling offended because you're not given proper deference and proper politeness and prestige and so on, the answer would be just go give them more prestige, be nicer to them, show that you really appreciate them. Well, that's what Trump did yesterday. He said, "We love you," to these guys.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, because I don't love them much. And I can't disguise the fact that I have real contempt for these people. So in a sense, yes, it's elites looking down on them. And yet it's not, what can you do about it? How can you pretend otherwise? I mean, can you try to make up to these people by going and saying, come to dinner at my house. I think you're such a good company. I want to invite you over. You see what I mean?
Well, yeah, I have so much to say. I mean, that first I want to say that I do know many Trump supporters, and there are several reasons. One is that I am into social media. As you know, I've been very involved with World Beyond War's social media, and I also do my own social media. And I do consider that social media is a serious place for discussion of these topics. So I interact with Trump supporters, not jerks, not. I mean, by the way, you use the word ruffians. I do want to turn that around. I hope us peace activists are ruffians sometimes in the good sense, but I believe that all people are good. I am very much a believer in that everybody's good, but when we are stupid or when we are ignorant, we make mistakes, and when we are poorly led, we make mistakes. So, and by the way, just right before talking to you, I've been talking to a friend of mine in Indiana, Columbus, Indiana, who I've been berating because he told me he voted for Trump, and I've been berating him for it, and trying to ask him, how does it feel? How does it? Because I know this friend of mine, and maybe he's even watching, who knows, because I was just arguing with him. He voted for Trump, and I said, do you feel ashamed? Now that you see what's happening in the Capitol, do you feel ashamed? And by the way, what I find for many of these types of people is that they're dealing with what's going on right now by shutting it out. This particular friend of mine has actually doesn't watch the news anymore, and he's and shutting it out, simply being in denial of how odious and murderous and evil your government is a way of dealing with it.
Well,
But
he can't have
I want to say,
hearing about yesterday. What was his answer when you asked him, do you feel ashamed?
well, this was very funny. His answer was he didn't know it happened. Do you know that there are a lot of people who only watch Fox News or who only listen to Rush
covered in Fox News?
Well, they have a very, very different way of presenting this stuff. So even, and in this particular friend, I believe, doesn't watch televised news at all, but he is basically on a no news diet. And I believe the answer is because he can't handle the truth, to quote Jack Nicholson. A lot of people who are on the Trump team have gone into a no news diet because it's the only way to bear the guilt of the fact that they've cast their lot with white supremacist fascists, that they are on the Nazi side. They are on the Nazi side. Sorry. And so, because and by the way, I live in Brooklyn, New York now, but I grew up in Suffolk County, Long Island, which is only 30 miles from here, but very red, very Republican, very red, very it's sort of Irish, Italian, working class neighborhood. I'm Jewish myself, but growing up there has led me to have many other friends who are Trump supporters. And by the way, the county I'm from, Suffolk County, voted for Trump, and people don't know that about New York. Is that we have a lot of red as well as blue districts here. So I do believe that. The reason we are in this disaster is because of the news sources that they are watching are polluted by corporate fascist propaganda, and I'm talking about Fox News and Rush Limbaugh. By the way, some people don't even know that, like, the influence of the Rush Limbaugh type talk radio, Mark Levin, etc., is vast. These voices are very influential.
And I honestly have never even heard them. I don't think I would.
Wow.
I never heard Rush Limbaugh. Have you listened to him at some point? And I don't know, what is
yes.
he?
Oh, yeah.
How can you characterize what
well, I consider it my goal to talk to Trumpers. And as an anti-war activist, I consider it my goal to talk to people who believe that war is a positive force in the world, which is unfortunately more people than you and I. There are more people who think that war helps the world, which I think you and I both know is just such a sad misconception. But I believe people are poorly led. It's the leadership, and it's the community, it's the media. So when I want to sort of tie it back to what you were talking about, class and education. I don't think the voters are the problem. The voters in America are not the problem. Our media that feeds us two contradictory narratives, the MSNBC narrative and the Fox News narrative, and I think basically choose one and hate the other. That's basically our media diet: is choose one channel, hate the other channel. And I think you and I probably are way to the left of MSNBC. So it's very sad for people like us that we don't even have a channel.
Well, yes, but
Is
it's
that
one. I
ringing?
mean, that's where I get in trouble, because my friends say, or people who really, there's kind of the notion that if there are people who are hurting because they've lost status and they feel under recognized and under appreciated in status, then the thing to do is reach out and talk more. I admire people with that point of view. Van Jones on CNN has that point of view. He really
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
extremely good at talking to people he disagrees with. Okay, I am not, because I really think when they're telling a lie, I'm going to call it a lie. I can't help that. And if somebody is, well, yesterday I did a talk show with a dear friend who said, I used the word backward. And she said, don't use that word. I guess the logic is, if you use more respectful terminology, you don't call people backward. That's insulting. You what do you call them? I don't know. I call them backward. And that's the problem. How can I lie enough to pretend that I respect people that I simply don't?
Good question. I mean, my answer is to dive in and engage with them. I told you the story of my friend in Columbus, Indiana, but I would say I have about 5 to 6 of these running conversations. And by engaging with them, I think I understand what, so that is my answer. But I also,
But don't
let's
you,
snap this back.
if you think
Yeah.
you understand them, do you really have respect for their point of view? I mean, do you really think they are right in any sense of the word?
Oh, great question. First, I would have to say, I'm when I'm engaging with them, I'm working on them. I'm working on each of them. So I do have respect for the fact that they are willing to talk to me. Because anybody who's a Trumper or a white supremacist who doesn't want to examine their deepest beliefs isn't gonna spend their time talking to me. So now, with that said, I have to point to, I think, the most important word here, which is tribalism. So, a person who's in the Deep South, their heritage is the heritage of the Deep South. And by the way, another thing I believe, and now I know you're in Canada, so you're lucky that you don't have to deal with this. I do believe the heritage of the Civil War, the legacy of the Civil War, is still with us today. And so, if your tribal feelings are that Black Lives Matter is evil, and therefore the cops who are busting heads at Black Lives Matter riots must be good. If that's your tribal, sort of configuration, then you are doomed to have that as a starting point. And the best you could do is build up from there. So I'm thinking about cultural legacies. I mean, you and I are both people, but we come from families that taught us. So I feel lucky that I was born into a progressive, open-minded, multicultural family. I feel lucky that I have many different ethnic groups in my family, and that I meet many different types of people um, in my world. But people who have more limited exposure and maybe don't have as much diversity in their lives, I think they default to white. I'm talking about Americans here. Default to white supremacist tribalism, which is what Fox News and Rush Limbaugh are pouring into their heads. And I don't want to overemphasize the importance of media. It's not like I think media pushing the white supremacist narrative is the only problem. But if I had to pick out the single cause of Trump, I would say Fox News.
Mhm.
Fox News and talk radio. The single,
Okay, so
that's my opinion.
we
I
believe in freedom
maybe
of speech. But you and I are
I know
real.
how powerful it is. I know how influential it is. I'm
We
sorry,
believe,
say that again.
we believe in freedom of speech. You and I are both Democrats in the lower case sense of the word. I am pretty sure. I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
And so one of the important things I believe in is free speech. And if that's the case, we are giving a blessing to people who want to say lies, who want to distort reality, uh, and so on. So I, what do you do about that? I find it a real dilemma. I
I
can't
sure do
say I
too.
find it actually, I don't find it a dilemma because, as I say, I don't meet any of these people. If I did, I would have a difficult time pretending to be respectful. Let's say that.
Well, what if we map this back to the fact that you and I are both peace activists? Because the fact is, neither the Republican nor the Democratic Party in the United States is aligned with what I believe, and I'm guessing not fully aligned with what you believe, because the United States has problems that go beyond, you know, what we're dealing with. So I feel that the big answer, and this is why I'm a peace activist, the big answer is to fix our most fundamental problems. And that involves dealing with America's immoral foreign policy and our fossil fuel abuse and our corrupt capitalism and, the crimes of Wall Street, which go unpunished year after year,
Are those
and trickle.
are those
Sorry,
the
go ahead.
things that you talk to when you talk to your Trump loving friends? Do you talk about
Yes,
climate and foreign policy and militarism and so on? And how far
yes.
do you get with that? I mean, to be honest, there was a time when Hillary and Trump were debating, and I thought I'm just not going to vote because I can't vote for her either. Well, I didn't. Thank goodness. I realized that not voting for her was in effect voting for him, and
Right.
and because I thought about what he would do to the Supreme Court, etc. Then, but I didn't really feel that it was going to be any move toward peace either way, because the
Right.
Democrats are just as tough on that as anybody, I guess.
Well, um, can we take a step back and think more idealistically about the fact that if we were to manage to end war, and I know that's a far cry from where we are, that maybe by resolving the root causes of the misery in our society and the guilt in our society and the trauma and the fear, how much fear is caused by fear of foreigners, fear of invasion, fear of war. We know how many billions of dollars we spend on weapons. That's how afraid we are. If we can address the root causes, I do actually believe the human race is changing at a fast rate. And I know some peace activists are like, "Oh, back off this, cosmic stuff." But it's sometimes I can sound like Marianne Williamson, who I actually think is quite brilliant. I don't know if you know who she is.
Yeah,
You do. Okay.
Turan, I know, and I
Yeah.
don't really know her work much, but I know she's kind of
I mean,
idealistic and if pie in the sky sort.
but so in a way, I come from a pie in the sky background too. I studied philosophy in college, and my intro to peace activism didn't come from being on the streets. It came from reading books. So I actually think it is our project to fix our biggest problems, and our biggest problems are war, you know, racism, violence, greed, and to not shrink away from fixing our big problems. And then the types of people Van Jones is talking about will not be living these lives of fear and trauma and self-hatred. I mean, it's my belief that war generates trauma and fear that echoes and reverberates in our lives
Certainly wouldn't disagree with you.
by only by solving our most fundamental problems can we have better politicians and better governments.
I certainly agree with you, but I would have a little bit of different angle on it because I think there war is not the only threat to humankind and human survival. And we've got global warming, as you know. We have the possibility of famine. We have pandemics, obviously. We have cyber risks now, everything from a Chernobyl thing to having your government offices hacked and all of your secret plans revealed, and our electric grid may be blown up if they want to. So there's cyber things, and then so we have to handle all of those things, and I see them as something that we can handle best, not separately, but all together as a system, because I think they're all interdependent causally. And probably the linchpin of the whole thing is militarism, because it isn't just the fear that people have as a result of war or the anticipation of war, but also the effects of investing in and maintaining a huge arsenal of weapons and armed forces and all of that, that misdirects our funds and our energies away from the solutions that we need to give into really bad.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I would also add the more practical fear of the many people who are part of the military industrial complex of losing their livelihoods. Unfortunately, the military industrial complex is a big, big part of our economy, and that's no small fear. So sadly, by putting weapons manufacturing at the core of our economy, as we have, along with fossil fuel abuse, we make it the fact that solving our biggest problem would actually be economically disadvantageous. So we've got a gun to our head. The gun to our head is the military-industrial complex. I mean, Eisenhower said it. We're going to destroy ourselves with war profiteering, and look at the damage we do overseas. I mean, I also want to say, I do recognize the privilege I have of sitting here in a comfortable apartment in Brooklyn when my country is waging war in Yemen and supporting Netanyahu in Gaza and the various things we've done in Latin America that we're still doing, Venezuela, yeah, I mean, this is again why I sort of feel like we have a chance to fix this. One thing I've said before, I'm not an anti-war activist just for the sake of doing it. I believe we're going to end war. We have to end war. Either we end war or we die, or our planet disappears.
Well, yes, and
we
I think
have
in
to.
a way,
and I wonder.
go
ahead.
Oh,
I just wonder how you react to something like that.
Oh, all of it, absolutely. I think we're on the same page completely. The only thing that I'm now focusing more on is the notion that just telling people stop investing in military, it's not enough, because exactly, not only investors would lose profits, and that I believe in telling them take your money and put it someplace else, but also the jobs would be lost. And here in Canada, we are funding, supporting a group of an industry that's producing armored personnel carrier vehicles on a big scale for sale to Saudi Arabia. And the government has not wanted to stop doing that, although the public sees it's a shameful thing to do. But the government continues because they would have a huge number of jobs suddenly lost if they stopped it. So I think that as peace workers, we have to not only say, stop doing this, but rather show where we should put the energies and jobs elsewhere. So working with, building green infrastructure, building, and don't use the word green because that turns people off sometimes, but creating jobs that are good, that we need to have solutions to, that would be contributing a real good answers to things. Say, stop this, but also create this. And we ought to be doing the research on what needs to be done and how to actually take the same people who are working in this particular area who are going to lose their job and say, now, when we shut this down, we're building a plant that's going to do this instead, and you're all going to be hired, and here's what your jobs are going to. That kind of closeness
Well,
of showing the linkage needs to be done more, I think, than we've been doing it.
well, there's a 3-word phrase for that: Green New Deal. And I'm very much behind the Green New
I am
Deal. Now,
too, but
I'm actually, yeah, I'm concerned that you said the word green is, I use the word green a lot.
of course
Green
I
New
do too.
Deal is where I'm at.
I've signed everything, but and I belong to everything like that. But at the same time, if what you're saying is we've got to be able to speak with Trumpists and right-wing people in a way that they can hear, then there's the dilemma. If you use the word green, that's the end of it. They don't want to hear it. But if you use jobs or healthcare or education or improving their highways and bridges so they're safe, etc., then they maybe be able to hear it. But there's certain words like green that may, in fact, be counterproductive for, I don't know. I mean, I can't talk to these people. You say you do, and
Well,
I don't talk to them.
well, maybe some of them will listen to your podcasts and your videos and hear you, even though you don't, because I want you to talk to them. But I want to say that when I talk to them, I do a lot of the talking. In a way, I feel sorry for some of my friends because they have to listen to me, and I don't, take a tentative stand on these issues. If somebody says they think the environmental movement is wrong about anything, they will have to listen to me explain why they are stupid. And when I say I talk to Trumpers, I don't coddle them. I talk reality to them. And I do think that the environmental movement, the green movement, is a winner right now. We are winning with that one, and we need to lead with that. In fact, one of the goals of the peace movement, I think, right now, is to better explain how the military is the biggest offender in the world of environmental
Well,
abuse.
except that, as I understand, if I look at the Green New Deal documents, they don't talk about militarism. That's the one thing
I
that they
know.
actually don't mention, that, yes, we
Well,
want to take money out of the military and put it here.
yeah.
That's where it
No,
needs.
I know. And this is where, I also sometimes have to argue with people who might consider themselves more on the further on the spectrum from conventional politics than me, because some people don't even like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the Squad, and what I consider to be and Bernie Sanders, our only good politicians. In my opinion, these are our only good politicians. But even these politicians, simply because they are office holders and they are in the Democratic Party. They're certainly not mainstream in the Democratic Party, but many people who are progressive will reject even Bernie Sanders or
Mm.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So the word green will cause problems on both sides, but we just have to keep persisting. I don't take it from them. They will hear me explain why they're wrong.
Right.
And that's how I deal with it.
But now go back to my original dilemma. If you're going to explain to them why they're wrong, it, does that work? I mean, arguing with people, I don't think often works. I've rarely seen anybody say, "Oh, yes, you've just convinced me. I've been wrong all my life."
Yeah, I know what you mean. Maybe again, the question between us here is, do we solve the problem of fascism or Trumpism by addressing the voters or by addressing the the ringleaders? And I actually, again, I think the voters are I don't think the voters are the problem. I think the problem is the crap that we shovel at the voters. Give them these horrible choices, and
What are you going to do to stop it?
So,
I have no idea how to. I mean, I don't even listen to Fox News. I don't know, but any of those right wing, theorists, if you can dignify them with that term. I mean, they've got a right to speak. I believe in freedom of speech.
oh yeah,
Am I going to stop
do
them?
too. But I believe the answer. The answer is we have to fix our problems. Again, if we don't end war, we will never have a good government. That's what I believe. I believe war and democracy, the institution of war and democracy, are incompatible. How can we possibly call ourselves a democracy when we're inflicting violence or profiting on inflicting violence in other countries? Mm-hmm. And the world has not been connected for that long. 100 years ago, it was possible for a person in the United States or in Canada to not realize the effects that militarism is having around the world. We don't have that problem anymore. Now we know how guilty we are. So again, this is why I'm an anti-war activist. This is why I don't, I have some friends, by the way, and I respect them, who spend a lot of time calling people for elections, vote for Joe Biden, vote for, this congressman. I don't spend any time on electioneering. I spend time on anti-war activism, because the election is, to me, the election is downstream from the problem. The problem is war, fossil fuels, greed, capitalism. Does that kind of answer your question? I mean, I know the questions you're asking can't be answered easily, of course, but that's how I would answer.
Well, you're absolutely an ally. I am delighted to have this conversation with you, and our hearts are exactly in the same place. Whether our operational priorities are, how you schedule your day, and where you're going to write checks to cover this or that fund, whether you're covering the same things that I don't know, but they're certainly compatible.
Yes.
The organizations that you support and the ones that I support are certainly compatible, and on working in the same direction. And I think there's value in really noting that people who are working on pandemics, or people who are working on food security, or people who are working to try to solve the cyber risks, those are people are working on the same system.
Yes.
That we're all working against. We're all trying to solve the same set of problems that are interrelated. And I think we ought to know each other a little better and be in touch, and if anything, find ways of collaborating more. Yes. I'd like to, I do have good contacts in the world beyond war. I'd like to have more. I mean, let's find ways of helping each other. So terrific.
Good. Let's do this. And I'd love to have you on the World Beyond War podcast, which I host. I do one episode every month. So sure. let's do more of this. I mean, we're both putting out messages here. So and I agree, we are allies, and I'm glad to know you.
It's great. Good to make a new friend. Thank you so much, Marc.
Thank you too.
You take care. Bye.